Hi everyone, my name is Kurt Owen, and today I'm going to be going over my final portfolio for COMM275. I wanted to start with this shapes image here in Illustrator, using shapes to make an image. I just wanted to go over it because I felt that it added some certain things that I thought were useful, just like learning how to round down points and make these more round images. Especially with the eyeballs, I felt that it gave it a more human-like characteristic, and overall just adds to the kind of the beginning knowledge of understanding how to make different shapes in Illustrator, because I knew how to make shapes in like Photoshop a bit, things like that, but I didn't understand how to do it in Illustrator that well, so I really think it was a great start to getting more familiar with all of that. Moving on forward though from that, we have this photo. And then moving on forward from that, we have this Photoshop assignment. I thought this one was pretty useful because it taught me lots about the gradients and fills, and then of course adding in a lot of images onto one. So lots of layers were applied to do it. You know, even just changing shadow density and adding more shadows, adding in this door, as we'll call it, this pillar, to the image and making it look as if it's supposed to be like that. And really one of the most craziest parts I feel like for this was definitely, well, some of it was the shadows, like how you shadow this out and just make these clouds look like they're supposed to be there. Just all of it in general. There's so many layers, and just learning how to make it look realistic. Even just the boat, as you can see, there's almost this little shading that appears right here, but so you would not see that once it's there because it fills in so perfectly, but it's more noticeable when you know about it. And same thing with these, you know, adjusting it just correctly. Like this is just such a soft shadow, but when you throw it in there with the clouds, it really adds to it. But see, there is certain mistakes that I would like to learn from and get better at. Like there's some overfill of the gradient kind of leaking onto this cloud. I didn't realize this until after the fact. Same with like how this line isn't perfect with the clouds and the water. Certain things that I could get a lot better at, even this cloud not being in front of the background image here of the gradient. Just things that I didn't fully understand as much yet and just could have gotten better at. But then moving on, we have this one that I really enjoyed. This project right here was taking those ideas from that Photoshop project and actually now applying it all together and making our own. So what I loved a lot about this and why I felt I learned so much is I first had to take this image right here, and this is a car. Now, one thing you might notice is it looks like this car is just, you know, it's just sitting on the road, everything's going fine, pretty cool. Well, this car is actually from a video game, so that's one thing, is I actually took this picture of a video game, cropped out the car, I had to shade it down, kind of get it to look rounded off. Very much was interesting to do, but it's a video game car, and I wanted to make it look as realistic, or not as realistic as I could, but I wanted to take it and put it in the real world and see if it worked, and I think that it did somewhat work, especially since I changed up the shadings and things on the car, which I did in Photoshop, or in its own Photoshop project, so it won't show up on here, but after I had done that, I thrown it over here, but I feel like it adds to the appearance of the sky, things like that, almost reflects off of it. And then of course the sky is its own thing, and that was really cool to add into the image as well. And then of course shading to try to match everything up. Now the sun was hitting this car a lot harder in the original photo, and I couldn't quite figure out how to make that work with how the shaders work, but I tried to adjust them to make it not look like the sun was just beaming down on it as the sky is, you know. But overall I learned a lot from this, and I'd like to learn even more to try to make an even more realistic photoshopped image. Um, but moving on from that, we go into a couple other things. We're going into another thing right here. This was my logo for my magazine, which will be the last thing we go into. And you'll see real quick, just a couple things to touch on real quick on it, why I liked this logo for the magazine. I liked how I took a real image of a lion and vectorized it out, made it look like cartoony, then brushed it to round it off, and then added it to my logo of shapes. Then I like how I have this outline. It kind of gives it that almost like it's just looks almost like a wave of a moving beat. And then of course rounding this using a anchor point, or I don't quite know, a path, and being able to type this in and have it rounded and look this way was very cool. Overall, very much so like this one. And then of course going into the last and final thing, this is probably the project I hated and also loved the most at the same time. I was so mixed with it, but I feel that the things I didn't like were all just because I didn't understand them, and I like learning, so it's, especially when it's things like this, I really enjoy trying to reach outside the box. So I did love this project to that degree. What I did here is I tried to almost like Life magazine, got the big rap central at the top. You have my logo down here. It's about music and things like that, and reviews. Got the artists that are in the magazine on top of the main artist. Going into it, you have the animation at the top. The buttons were pretty hard to learn and how to get this to work, because they kind of go in their own function, but they, this connects to this button connects to this. It was very interesting to get that function to work as well as it does now. And of course added some links that work as well. This is the page for Joyner. He's the main guy in the magazine. I felt that that was how it should look. Eminem's animation as well. I did animations for all the names after the first, of course, cover page, but it's all their albums, and of course more pictures. This back photo is the album photo. Snoop Dogg, same thing, album cover, the songs. This one has an interview, even a quote from the interview, album, pretty cool, and it has an animation also. This one, same thing, animation. There's a submit form down here. But overall, I really enjoyed this assignment, and I enjoyed the class, and can't wait what the future holds. And I had a blast, and I hope that all this knowledge will help me in my courses at Boise State. Anyways, have a nice day, everyone.